Good morning, I'm Angelo Castro III.
I'm Angela, and we are the Castros.
And as you can see, we have popcorn and hot dogs on the table. And if you know,
may popcorn tayo for...
popcorn and hot dogs are a staple every time you're watching something entertaining. Like may movie night ka, or may sports event ka pinapanood. Ano ba event natin ngayon?
Hearing.
Well, today kasi, Brunch will... Inaano mo naman ito?
Ay, okay. Pinag-practice ako.
Wala na.
Okay, go.
Wala na.
Go.
Kasi you know kasi, we have popcorn and hot dogs because very exciting po nangyayari with regard to the Vice President and her press conferences at sagutan nila ni BBM. And of course, Congress issued a very strong statement as well regarding the Vice President. Of course, there's impeachment watch going on. Kung ano ba mangyari. Ano ang sinasabi ni PBBM and Congress with regards to they have to face the charges or the music.
Exactly.
Yun
And
ang
yung legality ng pag-contempt at saka pag-detain dito sa Chief of Staff ni OVP, ni Vice President Sara Duterte that prompted her to go to the hearing yesterday, di ba?
Yes,
Finally.
correct. Oo.
At nanumpa na siya doon. Sige, mamaya isa-isahin natin yan. Ngayon, top 5 lang muna tayo. Doon muna tayo concentrate sa mga
we have a special coverage today. Okay, we're serving you news in a countdown.
All that, before your second cup of coffee, this is Brunch.
Now, serving hot at the fifth spot is the latest exchange of the President and the Vice President. President Bongbong Marcos told Vice President Sara Duterte that she cannot, quote-unquote, tokhang the truth. The Vice President fired back by accusing his family of killing former Senator Benigno Aquino Jr. Here's the report.
May kinausap na ako na tao. Sinabi ko sa kanya, kapag pinatay ako, patayin mo si BBM, si Lisa Araneta, at si Martin Romualdez. No joke. No joke.
This is a clear statement for President Bongbong Marcos that Vice President Sara Duterte is threatening his life. Without mentioning her name in a recorded statement, Marcos said she will not get away with this.
Kung ganun na lang kadali ang pagplano sa pagpatay ng isang presidente, paano pa kaya ang mga pangkaraniwan na mamamayan? Yung ganyang kriminal na pagtatangka ay hindi dapat pinapalampas. Yan ay aking papalagan.
Marcos told his former UDI team running mate that things would not escalate to this if she just answered the questions from lawmakers about her office's confidential fund spendings. He even threw some shade against the VP. Marcos called VP Sara's latest remarks as kwentong chichirya, a reference to Mary Grace Piatos, the recipient of OVP's confidential funds, whose identity is still being debated. He also said that the Vice President cannot tokhang the truth, which is an obvious use of her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte's bloody war on drugs.
Hindi na sanang hahantong sa ganitong drama kung sasakodin lamang ang mga lehitimong katanungan sa Senado at sa House of Representatives. Ang katotohanan ay hindi dapat itokhang. Imbis na diretsahang sagot, nililihis pa sa kwentong chichirya.
The Vice President said she has yet to see the President's full response to her, but that did not stop her from doubling down her attack, not just to him, but to the Marcos family.
Papalagan ko din yung ginagawa nila sa akin. Diba? Pumalag nga yung buong bayan nung pinatay ng pamilya nila si Benigno Aquino Jr.
Senator Amy Marcos, a known friend to VP Sara and a staunch defender of her father's legacy, has yet to comment on this matter. Meanwhile, the National Bureau of Investigation, or NBI, will file a subpoena on VP Sara for her threats against PBBM, First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, and House Speaker Martin Romualdez.
We are giving her chance, due process, to answer yung ibinibintang sa kanya. No, this is by way of subpoena, and we will ask her to appear before our office within 5 days from today. Appear siya sa amin, sagutin niya yung aming mga tanong para mabigyan ng pagkakataon.
The Department of Justice also vowed to look for the hitman that VP Sara allegedly hired against the first couple and Romualdez.
Now let's further assess the ongoing tension between President Bongbong Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte.
We have with us via Zoom political strategist Malu Tiquia. Good morning and thanks for joining Brunch, Ms. Malu.
Good morning, Angela, and good morning, Diego.
Yes.
Nice to be here.
Yes, nice to see you too. What's your general reaction po about this, yung mga pagpalag ni President Marcos kay VP Sara?
Well, alam mo, dapat maaga pa niya sinabi yan para hindi umuwi sa ganito. Kasi, uulitin natin, no, sino ba nagbigay sa kanya ng confidential and intelligence fund? Hindi ba si Presidente? Hindi ba noong August 2022 nag-request ang Vice Presidente, in-approve niya, in-authorize niya, at sinabi niya coordinate with DBM? So may planong sinabit kay Presidente, in the assessment of the President, okay bigyan. So dapat hindi nga ang sumasalag ang Office of the Vice President. Hindi ba dapat siya ang nagsabi? Bakit ko siya binigyan at saan ginamit? So kung sana maaga pa lang nagsalita, kunyari sinabi niya kay Speaker, between yan sa amin, huwag kayong makialam. Madali sanang natapos ito Ang problema, hindi siya umiimik at pinababayaan niya ang persecution na nangyayari sa Vice Presidente.
That's good you mentioned, Ms. Mulu, about yung silence, no? Kasi a lot of people were saying that finally, well, nagsalita na rin si Pangulo. But the question is, while they said this may be his toughest reply in the last 2 years, ang problem daw, it was still very indirect in terms of what do you mean? Do you agree with that, Ms. Malu?
Yes, I agree with that, Diego. No, when the president takes center stage, this president does not really like doing a national address, having a conversation with the Filipinos. No, in his 2 and 5 months in office, wala naman siyang pakikipag-usap sa bayan na nangyari. So itong tape na video at release yung script bago tinape, kita mo, I guess it's his way of sensing nasa akin ba ang public dito. At makikita mo pagkatapos na nalaro yung video na napanood ng taong bayan, makikita mo yung reaction These days kasi ang hindi mo nakikita ang reaction sa taong nasa labas. Nakikita mo ang reaction dun sa emoticons. At nakakabagabag na ang isang pangulo lumabas ng ganon tapos pinagtatawanan lamang.
Kaya, Ms. Mulu, I'd like to touch up on that, no, sa sinabi nyo. Do you think he could have been more specific in regards kung ano ang gagawin ko, ano yung ginawa niya sa akin na mali? Or could he have done this earlier para medyo ma-avert itong kaguluhan na ito and early on na settle na itong issue?
Yeah, tama ka dun, Diego, no? Early on, nung question pa lamang sa budget at binalasubas ang Vice Presidente, dapat sinabi na niya yun na, Speaker, tigil niyo yan. Ako ang nagbigay, ako ang nag-authorize niyan. Wag niyo na niyang pag-usapan. Pwedeng ganun Pero inalaw niya. Ngayon, tama ka rin dun, Diego, dahil dapat merong actionable. Ano ba yung gagawin niya? Parang motherhood At nag-adjust siya sa lengguwahe ng mga Duterte nung sinabi niyang yung tokhang, yung chichirya, hindi yan usually language niya. So makikita mo pag diniconstruct mo yung sagot niya, talagang ang target ang DE. Yung base ng mga Duterte. Hindi naman yung mga nakapag-aral o mga negosyante. Kasi ang negosyante at nakapag-aral, ang tatanungin natin, how do we resolve? Kasi walang kwan In effect, walang resolution. At pag walang resolution, ang bayan ang naghihirap. Ang bayan ang nag-iisip. Paano ba ito? Paano ba natin maipropromote ang ating Pilipinas kung ang dalawang ating mga leaders nagbabangayan? At makikita mo talagang kahit nga yung sagot ni Vice Presidente, nagulat ako nung in-invoke niya si Benigno Aquino.
Yes.
So sa tingin ko hindi mare-resolve na may mga kampo nagsasabi na tigil muna, mag-usap. Sa tingin ko tumawid na tayo doon sa tulay.
Irreparable na, sa tingin nyo?
Talagang confrontational.
Sa tingin nyo po, irreparable na?
Oo, Angela, very irreparable. Kagabi, nagsalita rin ang dating Presidente Duterte. So, makikita mo na mapipilitan tayo muli na humusga bilang Pilipino na ginawa natin noon.
So from President Bongbong Marcos, let's go to the sister, Senator Amy Marcos. Nagkaroon hindi na pulingid sa kaalaman natin yung mga statements ni VP Sara regarding sa kanilang ama, yung kukunin yung labi, tatapon sa West Philippine Sea. But she stood by her, no, Senator Amy Marcos. What do you think ngayon? Ano ba dapat? Kasi nung nandoon sa Veterans Memorial Hospital, yung Chief of Staff ni Vice President Sara Duterte, she also went there, diba? Along with sila Senator Bato de la Rosa, Senator Bongo, etc. She visited the Chief of Staff. So ano ba yung dapat niyang gawin? Should she maintain this kind of friendship with the Vice President Sara Duterte, o dapat bang dumistansya na siya dahil may sinasabi na tungkol sa pagpatay na, no, sa presidente itong si VP Sara?
Angela, napakahirap ng posisyon ni Senator Amy, no? Una, siya ang guardian ng ligasiya ng kanyang tatay. Makikita mo naman sa pagiging senador niya, parating yun ang ini-invoke, parating sinusundan yung mga programa ng tatay niya, parating nagiging alituntunin niya sa public service yung mga sinabi ng tatay niya. Napakahirap dahil siya ay isa sa 2 gobernador na sumanib at tumulong kay Presidente Duterte. So merong ganong historical. Masakit dahil kahit nakabalik na dito sa Pilipinas ang pamilyang Marcos, si Duterte lamang ang nagpalibing sa kanyang ama. Masakit dahil siya ang nagkumbinsi. Actually, siya ang nagtayo ng unit team.
Architect, oo.
Napakahirap. Wala akong mapapayo sa kanya. Siguro kailangang maging mahinahon. Mahirap naman kasing pumanig siya kay Vice Presidente. Pero alam naman natin na, very
that's what
close.
she's doing right now.
Yeah, oo.
Oo. Napakahirap.
Oo. But what about VP Sara to Senator Amy Marcos? Dapat bang mag-cut ties na rin siya?
Well, kasi alam mo, ang hindi alam ng publiko, silang tatlo ang nag-decide kung sinong tatakbo. Sila lang tatlo. Wala doon ang unang ginang, wala doon mga strategy. Sila lang tatlo nag-usap. At doon sinabi ni Vice Presidente, ikaw na ang tumakbo. So, nagparaya. Makikita natin si BP kahit na dun sa yung tumataas ang boses niya, nai-stress na siya. Ang gusto lang naman niya magtrabaho. Ulit-ulit na sinasabi, magtrabaho na tayo. Halika na, gawin na natin ang dapat nating gawin. Siguro hindi niya talaga nakilala si Presidente Marcos. Siguro doon sa promiso kasi na silang tatlo ang nag-usap, nawala kasi si Senator Amy sa governance.
Yes.
So yun, very telling kasi kung yung nagtayo ng unit team hindi kasama sa governance, sino ang tulay ni Vice Presidente? Nakita natin talagang tinatabi siya.
Miss Mo, I'd like to ask, no, in your opinion, ano ngayon po ang impact nitong nangyayari, no, between the Duterte and the Marcos camp sa upcoming elections? Because we all know yung Marcos brand is carried by Senator Amy Marcos, predominantly also with PBBM. Hati sila doon. And si Senator Amy is, ika nga, nasa gitna po. No, so how should voters take this, yung mga loyalists ng Marcos or Duterte, and how will this impact yung mga ini-endorse nila this coming midterm?
Well, maganda yung tanong mo, Diego, no? Malaki ang impact nito sa eleksyon. Makikita natin ang bawat kampo, hindi naman talaga seryosong gumagalaw. Hindi katulad dati nung mga ibang panahon, ang pre-campaign maingay na. Pangatlo, ang sinet up ng alyansa or the admin party are people who can win on their own. So kung titingnan mo yan, 6 dyan ang kayang tumindig on their own without any endorsement. 6 ang kailangan ng tulong. Nasaan ang kapatid, si Senator Amy? Nanalo siya rank 8 nung 2019. Yes. tumataas siya. In fact, naging 4. Pero ngayon, parang bumababa siya. So she's suffering because of the Marcos brand. Ah, can the president endorse? I don't think he has an endorsement power like the former President Duterte. Very critical rin yan kasi sa pagpupulso namin, nakikita namin galit ang taong bayan sa
Yeah.
mga nangyayari. Dati kasi alam mo, Diego, ang korupsyon, parang yan yung ang kandidato, may ilang babae. Okay na, sige na. Dati umabot tayo dun sa punto, bago ng kay former President Noy Aquino, ang korupsyon hindi na pinag-uusapan, given na. Pero these days, talagang masusuka ka dahil talamak at ang binabawasan, pondo ng bayan.
That's right.
So ang taong bayan, malaking impact yan sa kampanya. Ngayon, ang administrasyon may control sa pera at sa makinarya. Bago ang machine na Miro system,
Yes.
hindi natin alam pa yan kung paano gumana. So malaking question yun doon. Kakayanin ba ng oposisyon? Ang isang problema dyan, hindi pa na-define sino ba talaga ang
Yun,
oposisyon.
tama po, Miss Malu.
Oo,
Sino ba ang oposisyon?
Yes, oo. Kaya ang taong bayan naguguluhan eh. Kasi sa tracking namin, tinatrack namin yung supporters na pro-administration at anti-administration. Na baka bawasan yun ha, at lahat pumupunta dun sa gitna na neutral. Na ang pag-aaral namin, pag na-define kung sino yung oposisyon, yung gitnang yon na palaki ng palaki, doon yun pupunta.
Ms. Padigo, I want to go back dun sa usapin ng confidential funds. So dito talaga nag-ugat ito mga pangyayari na ito. Do you agree po ba na itong si VP Sara, yung kanyang latest behavior ay diversionary tactics lang para hindi masagot itong mga tinatanong sa kanya sa House? Kung syempre yung mga netizens, nakikialam din sila, meron din sila mga opinion dito. Ang sa kanila, kung umattend daw siya, di ba, first hand nung hearing, hindi na daw po nangyari ito.
Oo, tama sa isang banda na dapat umattend siya ng mas maaga. Pero ang titingnan natin, kaya hindi siya siguro umattend ng ganong kaaga dahil siya ay vice presidente at DepEd. So, maraming sanga-sanga. Yung pagtawag sa mga tao at nakita naman natin lahat na halos tinawag, no? Sa yung kanyang pagkakagalit ng Sabado ng madaling araw, dahil na po sa ginawa sa Chief of Staff niya. Ako rin naging Chief of Staff, kung meron akong among katulad niya na hindi iniiwan, matutuwa ka, magkakaroon ka ng tapang ng loob. Pero doon maling-mali kasi ang Kongreso na ilipat mo ang isang detained for contempt, ililipat mo sa Women's Correctional. Ano ba ang Women's Correctional? Ang Women's Correctional ay isang preso para sa akusado at convicted. Hindi naman ho akusado si Attorney Lopez. Hindi naman ho convicted. Ang conviction galing yan sa korte. So, bakit mo gagawin sa madaling araw?
Yes.
Ako, kung tingin ko, kaya yun ginawa kasi hindi nila mapaalis si Vice Presidente sa kwarto ni Congressman Pulong. Ang sense nila, para daw tinatapakan ang institutional independence ng legislative branch. Yun naman kapatid. So,
Yes, yeah.
hindi ko maintindihan kung saan nanggagaling yun.
Miss Malu, I'd like to ask kasi the US election just ended and kumbaga napikon na daw ang citizens ng America. That's why Trump came into power. And with regards to Philippine politics, tumataas po ang political risk index natin sa mundo with regards to investment
ranking.
because nagkakagulo daw ang two highest positions of the land. Tumataas po ang presyo ng bilihin, gasolina. And do you think now that the electorate or the public are now also reaching a point na magti-tipping point na po and anytime soon mapipikon sa nangyayaring dalawang partido, dalawang paksyon and a new firebrand politician a la Trump or somebody tough will emerge? I'm taking off the bat. I'm taking a look at any of the Tulfos.
Well, alam mo, mantagal pa yung 2028 no? Pero mini-measure na nila ngayon pa lang.
Right.
Ano pa ang aral mula sa Trump campaign? Very clear doon na data, very clear doon na ground, very clear doon yung messaging. Ano yung messaging? Ekonomiya, future ng aking mga anak,
Yes.
at hindi magkaroon ng gera. Yun yung sa Amerika. Kung titingnan mo, Diego, globally, may anti-incumbency anti-incumbency wave
Oo.
globally.
Yes, yes,
Lahat
yes.
ng incumbent na iaalis sa posisyon.
Okay.
Maiaalis ba si Presidente? Hindi ko yun alam dahil 2028. But certainly, yung midterm, sa ating kasaysayan, ang midterm ay referendum ng incumbent. So, pag nanalo ang kung sino man niyang hindi nasa administrasyon, kahit isa o dalawa lang na matitindi sa Senado, sa tingin ko magiging lame duck ang susunod sa taon ni Presidente Marcos. Mas masakit yun na maging lame duck ka kasi wala ka ng, wala ka
Yes,
ng puwang.
that's
Kung
right.
titingnan mo, yung infrastructure kung wala ka pang sinisimulan ngayon, wala kang i-inaugurate pag nagtapos ang term mo.
Yun.
That's right.
Pero before we let you go, Ms. Wally, I wanna go back doon sa yesterday kasi after nung speech ni House Speaker Martin Romualdez, nag-pass sila ng resolution 2092 affirming yung kanilang support doon sa current administration. And after that, nagkaroon ng mga photo op and nandoon si former President, no, and now Congresswoman Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Kumakalat po online ngayon yung
Nakaganon.
picture na yun at naka-thumbs up siya. What do you make of that photo?
Well, for me, nothing. I know Representative Arroyo. She is a political survivor. Her being there is part of why she remains helping this administration. That doesn't necessarily mean she's rejecting Vice President Sara. Yung dalawa nanggaling na sa mahaba-haba na relasyon na nagsimula bago pa ng pagpili kung sinong tatakbo. So, siguro ilalagyan ng iba ng meaning. Hindi ako maglalagay ng meaning kasi ganun ang respeto ko kay Gloria Macapagal Arroyo.
Alright, sige. Marami pa kami gustong itanong but unfortunately we don't have much time. But thank you so much for your time with us. That was political strategist Maluti Kia. Alright, moving over na. Inubo na siya sa usapin. Kumain ka ng popcorn, no?
Kaya nga
Moving over now to our top 4. Vice President Sara Duterte made international headlines following her death threat remarks. CNN reported it with the headline, Philippine Vice President says she would have Marcos assassinated if she is killed. The headlines of Al Jazeera, Fox News, and the Times of India also carried the same tone. NBC News and The Guardian called VP Sara's statements as active threat for admitting that she hired a hitman against the president. Meanwhile, the New York Times reported PBBM's response to VP Sara. Nag-international yung natin.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
Issue.
another discussion, interesting discussion upcoming. Does this have any effect, really, what's happening on the country's international relations?
To answer that, we are joined by geopolitical analyst / vlogger, Richard Darian. Thanks for joining us again today.
Thank you, Richard.
Ken, what's up? Good morning.
Richard, you want some popcorn?
We have popcorn here.
Anyway,
yeah.
let's first off, what's your reaction about this latest remarks ni VP Sara? Did you really expect this kind of reaction?
Mukhang mas kailangan ko kape guys sa popcorn hanggang 2 a.m. pa yung mga interviews ko. Kahit si General Torre, nin-interview kanina ukol doon sa nangyaring insidente sa Kongreso. Actually, gusto ko mag-react sa mga discussion kanina.
Yes.
Pero sige, sagutin
I
ko
will
muna
ask
yung
you
mga sinasabi niyo.
later.
Tinanong niyo. Well, pagdating dito sa nangyari, hindi naman ito yung first time, di ba?
Yeah.
Nakita man natin nung isang buwan din nung gumanon si Vice Presidente
Right.
na
Yes,
nag-fantasize daw siya or minsan nangangarap daw siya, napipikon daw siya na gusto niyang puguran yung isang tao na ayaw niya. So this is not the first time na narinig natin. At sinabi rin ng NBI yan, di ba? The National Bureau of Investigation top officials also the other day said that nung first time narinig nila yan, they took it as symbolic. I think yun din ang term na ginamit ng analyst kanina dati to explain it away. But how are you gonna explain it away now, di ba? Yun ang tanong ko, hindi mo pwede sabihin na symbolic yan ng symbolic every time nangyari yan. As you correctly pointed out, saan ka sa mundo makahanap ng isang headline kung saan the Vice President of this country is talking about hiring an assassin to kill the President? And how on earth is that gonna make a country look good, right?
Yes,
And how on earth is that a reflection na ang gulo ay galing sa presidente? You know, like you can criticize the president on so many levels, but clearly ang destabilization, ang gulo, all of the wrong rhetoric is coming from one side of the equation. It's not President Marcos Jr. has been going after the Dutertes. It's not anyone else. It's the Dutertes who have been going after President Marcos Jr. and questioning his mandate. So I think we have to be very clear about the direction of let's just use the same term that Duterte used to use, destabilization in this case. So, no, this doesn't reflect well at all on the country. This is not good for investments. This doesn't make the job easy for people like me who go all around the world and say, give Philippines a second look. Sana mag-invest kayo ng lalo sa Pilipinas. Sana papunta dito yung manufacturing, hindi Malaysia, hindi Vietnam. And then sasabihin nila, pero hindi ganyan, wala naman ganyan sa Malaysia at Vietnam. Hindi naman yung kanilang deputy prime minister or yung deputy president nila ay nagsasabi na gusto kong puguran yung ulo ng presidente. So this doesn't reflect well on the country, and this definitely doesn't reflect well on the vice president of the Philippines. So I don't know, siguro on a mild level, tama naman siguro sinabi ni Senate President Jesus Cordero, if she needs help, if she's feeling too much pressure, then maybe she should get professional help. On a less mild level, you could say that maybe she's not aware of the duties of the vice president, na hindi trabaho ng vice presidente to not once but multiple times threaten the president of the Republic of the Philippines.
But Richard, do you agree with Maluti Kia's statement earlier saying na huli na or dapat noon pa nag-react itong si Pangulong Bongbong Marcos with regards to the mga statements ng Duterte?
Well, I mean, it's not like President Marcos Jr. did not make any reaction, right? Kung titignan natin, talaga nagsimula itong giyera ito, no? I've called it a kind of a semi-civil war. Nung January pa, when President Rodrigo Duterte, dun sa kanyang speech sa Davao, openly attacked the president, called for separation of Mindanao, and many saw that as essentially a form of insurrection. Even President Duterte talked about it's another people power against another Ferdinand Marcos. So this has been going on for quite some time, and then nakita naman natin yung responses from the Marcos administration has been varied. So President Marcos din medyo nag-joke din siya about fentanyl kasi na-accuse siya na gumagamit ng illegal na droga. And then yung first lady, of course, later on came out and said na batshot na daw siya. Literally, batshot na siya kay Vice Presidente. But in fairness naman, it was not until recently that the Vice President herself adopted a very aggressive rhetoric. Because before that, it's more Digong and Baste and the rest of the member of the Duterte dynasty. So I agree in a sense that, in fairness naman, Marcos Jr. gave chance to Sara Duterte herself to keep away or keep above the fray. But even Sara Duterte obviously eventually also adopted the kind of line and rhetoric of her father. So siguro, dapat sana una pa lang judgment call ni Marcos, it's easy to say now, na una pa lang sinabi niya na any attack on me, whether it's from the former president or vice president, etc., that that threatens the republic, that destabilizes the republic is not welcome, at sana sumagot siya. But we know that's not really the personality of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. And let's be honest, if Ferdinand Marcos Jr. acted more aggressively in his rhetoric earlier this year, baka sasabihin natin, nako, magiging dictatorship na tayo. So I think, precisely because his name is Ferdinand Marcos, he has always been very careful not to sound as too authoritarian or too aggressive. But I agree also with Malu that perhaps that was perceived as diffidence, masyadong mabait, and that may have encouraged the Dutertes to keep on pushing the envelope. But that doesn't justify the Vice President of the Republic saying the things she's saying.
But
This
on
is
the
really out of this world.
But you know,
Right.
Richard, kasi some would point out a very popular quote that if you keep the dog on a loose leash, then he tends to bite your hand multiple times. So ang point within is several analysts have compared the presidency of similarities between Bongbong Marcos and the late Benigno Aquino. Si Noy Noy, correct me if I'm wrong, no? Early on in his presidency, every time he was displeased with certain people attacking him, he would go on the record immediately and he would not mince words. He would be straight to the point. Ito daw si PBBM, ang nagiging problem, he's trying, because you mentioned the Isa Marcos, he's trying to tame it down and dinadaan sa joke. Like for example, Tokhang, binanggit niya yung chichiria. Do you think at this point in time, it's time to step up the ante for PBBM to put his foot down and say, look, I'm gonna control this and nip it in the bud?
Well, I mean, President Aquino, God bless his soul, also got a lot of pushback and criticism. Some
Yeah.
felt he a bit too pecan, right? Not only him, but
Yeah.
also many members of his administration were accused of being pecan and onion-faced, etc.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that's exactly the case, but that was also the cost of President Aquino's approach. And some would say at some point, ang nangyari din sa Aquino administration is hindi na rin nila nakikita yung katotohanan. In a sense that they didn't appreciate yung backlash dun sa mismanagement or perceived mismanagement ng Yolanda,
Yeah.
ng Mama Sapano, which I think was a horrible mistake by the former administration. So, lumabas sila na masyadong defensive, if not pecan. So, I think eventually that came back to haunt them, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the backlash of Duterte. I think the presidency of Rodrigo Duterte in 2016, in many ways, it was also about this pent-up frustration that this outgoing administration may have, okay, hindi sila corrupt, medyo matino, etc., etc., pero grabe naman, they cannot take any criticism. Remember, even when the Supreme Court came
Yes.
out with that rule against the disbursement acceleration program,
Yeah.
President Aquino came out in a press conference and criticized the Supreme Court. I'm not sure how that reflect very well on the president who was supposed to be reformist and liberal. Again, God bless his soul, but these were actually some of the areas where I had somehow disagreement with the previous administration. Even on West Philippines, I realized, you know, if you criticize their strategy, bakit puro kayong legal warfare, wala kayong ginagawa on the ground in terms of strengthening our position sa pag-asa, hindi rin masyadong nagsinkin. So actually, I would criticize the Aquino administration for not being open enough to criticism and sometimes sounding as too defensive, despite all the merits and good things that happened during that administration. Now, speaking of BBM, you know, yes, more could have been done, more could have been said, but as I said nga, may stigma kasi, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. yung pangalan niya. Pangalawa, this strategy has worked eh. This strategy, you want to call it good Machiavellian, you want
Yeah.
to call it mabait, whatever, it worked. I mean, look at Marcos Jr., he won the biggest ever, you know, margin for any president. He got the majority of the vote, the highest since his father in the 1960s. So siguro a part of his mind was saying, nag-work naman eh, bakit ko kailangan, why should I change my tricks if it's working, right? But now, obviously, it's no longer working. But I'll tell you what, yes, may mga patama siya, chicheria, Tokhang, obviously, piatos, yung nag-usapan ng mga religious, I'm not to name it, right? Either cheaping piatos, whatever. But, I'll be honest, you know, I'm an Ilocano, so I've seen the Marcoses throughout the years. I've met President Marcos Jr. in the past. I've been observing him as an expert for quite some time. Ito masasabi ko, I've never seen Marcos Jr. this angry. He really looked angry.
Yeah, he
Now,
did.
he
Yeah,
didn't look
yeah.
angry like Digong, but he looked angry. This is really an angry BBM. So sabi ko nga, the Dutertes might regret it because they may have finally brought out the Marcos in him. Because to be honest, as an Ilocana, I'll say, I've seen more of Romualdez in him. You know?
Yes, yes.
It's very malumanay, very gentlemanly.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I
this is
agree
more
with
of
that.
Totoo.
Romualdez.
Parang let
Now
this-
you saw the Marcos. Talagang, I would say the president was really pissed off. And accordingly, I think the hammer might come down. And speaking of the hammer coming down, ang nakikita ko dito is snowball effect. So, kung titignan mo, kung bawat issue lang, kaya siguro ng mga Duterte yan. Impeachment, siguro marami naman senador dyan na ayaw madamay dito kasi baka yung solid south, kakatin sila mamaya sa elections, di ba?
Right.
Yung debate. Criminal cases, they can, go to the court and appeal it and it can go on forever. Because ICC, they can also appeal it at at the Supreme Court. So marami issue na individually I think the Dutertes can push back and handle. But ang problema kasi nagkukumpul-kumpul na yan eh. I think it's very possible you'll see a snowballing of multiple cases against the Dutertes so that the wall will close in on them. So the impeachment may not work as things stand. But what if NBI or AFP unearth evidence that indeed a certain assassin may have been hired? That indeed there may have been seditious plans or coup plots, right? What if at the same time, lalong ma-empower yung ICC to feel confident enough to issue a warrant of arrest, right?
That's right. That's
What
right.
if at the same time there will be criminal charges filed against Sara Duterte that could eventually disqualify her from running in 2028? Hindi ito impeachment, but criminal charges can happen against Vice President because she doesn't have absolute immunity. She can be held culpable for serious crimes. So pag sumabay-sabay lahat ng mga yan, and then yung mga Nograleses get full support from the administration in the upcoming midterm elections, you can imagine all of this, if they converge, then that could really put the Dutertes on the defensive. Now, a while ago, I heard something about galit na galit ang tao sa corruption. Well, last thing I saw is like everyone's talking about, Mary Grace Piatos. That has nothing to do with President Marcos Jr. That has nothing to do. Now, kung strategy nung kabila is to say, wait lang. Sino ba kayo para sabihin corrupt kami? Kayo nga, ganyan. But so who's gonna benefit from this? You mentioned Trump, right? Coming back in the US. Well, in Trump, it was very clear. Biden is supposedly incompetent. I'm competent, bring me back. Here, my Mary Grace Piatos, di ba? Here, my confidential fund. So who are people going to vote? If people are angry at the Marcos administration, are they going to vote for the side who is now being investigated right and left for alleged abuse and of confidential funds? So I think, the winner here could be a third force. Could be the Tulfos, especially if the Tulfos can distance themselves enough from both sides. And in theory, could also be the progressive liberal opposition if they get their together.
Do you see the rise? Go ahead. No, so go ahead.
No, I was gonna
Go ahead.
ask nga kung may pagkakataon pa ba na makalusot dito or makabangon ng mga Duterte after all of this?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, as I said, again, going back to the case of Trump, but I can go with Berlusconi, Thaksin's,
Yeah, that's right.
examples all around the world. Orban, in the case of Hungary, I call it populist comeback, right? So hindi lang si Trump ang greatest comeback in human history. We have so many great comebacks in different countries, right? Populist comeback. Yeah, I think if mga Dutertes makalusot sila in the next years, because I think the next 12 months will be very, very difficult for Dutertes, including the midterm elections. Tama naman si Malu, for instance, kanina na she mentioned about the advantages of the incumbency. But if President Marcos Jr. doesn't follow through dun sa speech niya, yung galit version niya. Maybe not galit enough to many people, but galit version niya nevertheless. There's no follow through to that. If itong mga hearings na to ay hanggang free airtime lang ito sa mga congressman at walang mga kaso na ma-file, if the ICC doesn't coming in the next 6 months to 9 months, and if the Dutertes win all the top position, meaning Polong winning in the Congress and Digong winning in the mayor office, if they hold on, if they hunker down for the next 6 to 12 months, then by 2026 and 2027, maybe they can be in a position to plot their comeback. Because by that time, papunta na sa lame duck year si BBM. By that time, ang pag-usapan ng 2028. And by that time, if number 1 or number 2 pa rin si Sara Duterte sa mga surveys, may masabi sila. So it's really, I think, the next 6 to 12 ones will be crucial. So speaking of quotes, di ba, as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, when you strike at the king, essentially make sure you finish the job. So now, the Dutertes having all of these strikes at them right and left, if that doesn't lead to something decisive, they may come back even stronger, not only as victims, but they're gonna be also vengeance. And I think that's really the lesson.
I'd like to ask you on my end, Richard. Well, you're right. At least there's been a populist comeback across all over the world. But we've already had a populist president in Rodrigo Duterte. A lot of people are tired of politicians. A lot of people are tired, in the Philippines at least, of the populist look. Because parang may faction na pagod kay Duterte, may faction na napapagod na sa mga politiko dahil sa nangyayaring yun. Now, who could possibly be that third force? Do we see the resurgence of the pink wave, a yellow wave, or somebody dark horse that you see that's slightly galloping on the side na malay mo biglang naging high-ho silver, naging puti yung kabayo?
Tagalog ba or English?
White Knight.
Yan si Bitag, yan si Erwin, yan si Rafi. I think all of them are doing fantastic. I think time is underside. I actually sa aking basa, pagsusuri sa politika sa Pilipinas, para sa akin all politicians are populists in the Philippines. It's just a
Yeah.
question of variety of populism, right? Some are more, populist, gusto niya ng bigyan ko kaya ng maraming pagkain. I mean, Enrile, right? The other election, sabi niya, di ba? Gusto ko maging senador para bigyan ko kaya ng maraming pagkain. Or yung mga budots nung isa pang senador. So actually what we have are variations of populism. But the Duterte brand is really different. I think Dutertismo is really the most coherent, the most aggressive form of populism we have seen in Philippine history, and one of the most aggressive anywhere in the world. So it's a very coherent brand.
Yeah.
Habang yung iba, populism is more like a tactics lang. So populism could be a style and tactics, and populism could be an ideology, not style. Sa mga Duterte kasi ideology din siya eh. Meron talaga silang pananaw na very unique from all other presidents, essentially anti-constitutional, essentially outside the box, no, on so many levels, and more pro-China and Russia than anything else. But you're right, kanina, binanggit din natin yan. I think the Tulfos, the fact that they're doing so good in surveys, Rafi Tulfo is number 1 for the next president in number of surveys, or at least tied for number 1. Erwin and Ben Tulfo are competing for number 1 in the Senate race. That just tells you, hindi po nasasawa. Populism pa more. Diba? ang gusto ng tao is new version. Give us something parang parang Netflix yan. Okay, season 2.
New version, season
Well
2.
said, Mr. Haydayan. Populism pa more.
More, yeah.
Yes. Okay, sige. Fortunately, we don't have much
Ginusto
time.
natin to. Ginusto natin yan. Kaya huwag tayo
Totoo. Then we expect different result. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
today, geopolitical analyst Richard Hidarian. Thank you.
Whew, we're just getting
Oo
started.
nga eh.
We're just getting started.
Marami
believe it
pa ako
or
gusto
not.
itanong pero wala na tayong oras. More of our top 10 news when Brunch returns. Keep it here on One News. Good morning. You're still watching Brunch here on One News. 10:43 na. Di pa tayo madami pa tayo pag-uusapan.
Okay, let's get
Go
right
ahead.
to it. Now on our top 3. Another official of the Office of the Vice President was rushed to a hospital amid the issue on confidential funds. Here's the report.
Zuleika Lopez, the Office of the Vice President's Chief of Staff who was hospitalized over the weekend, was not present in the hearing of the House Committee on Good Government and Accountability yesterday. Deputy Speaker J.J. Suarez said Lopez submitted a certificate of confinement.
Kaso lang hindi po naman po sinasabi dito ng kanyang mga doktor na hindi po siya physically incapable of attending today's hearing. Hindi binanggit dito na dahil sa kanyang kondisyon, hindi siya makakarating.
Lopez's contempt citation was supposed to be lifted that day, but it was extended by 5 more days.
Wala na po
Mr.
tayong...
Chair, respectfully, may I say something?
Honorable Vice
Mr. Chair?
President, before I recognize you, would you like to take your oath?
After taking the oath, which he refused to in the previous hearings, Duterte was unstoppable.
You need to reconsider that extension of your detention. It was illegal in the first place.
If our action of detaining your chief of staff is against the law, I think the proper remedy, and I think you're a lawyer,
Yes, sir.
the proper remedy is to go to the court.
I will go to court.
Opo, pero
Oo,
that is
pero
your...
araw-araw, you are depriving a person of her liberty while I await.
DepEd Special Disbursing Officer Edward Fajarda was then asked about his handling of confidential funds. Fajarda confirmed that he only spoke about this to Duterte and a security officer named Colonel Dennis Nolasco. Nolasco supposedly received all money withdrawn, which at one point averaged 4 to 6 million pesos per week.
You have never had any interaction whatsoever with any of the recipients of the money.
Yes, Your Honor.
So you cannot verify po the truthfulness of the ARs that you receive.
Sino po ang nagbigay ng pahintulot o ng kapangyarihan para si Colonel Nolasco po ang mag-disburse ng pera?
Your Honor, si BP Sara po.
OVP Special Disbursing Officer Gina Acosta was also grilled about her role in disbursing confidential funds. Acosta said she was feeling shaky, so Duterte asked the lawmakers to give her some air. Acosta was attended to by medical personnel and was later brought out through a wheelchair and loaded to an ambulance.
Now, House Speaker Martin Romualdez fired back at Vice President Sara Duterte's threat against him. In a speech at the House, Romualdez called VP Sara's latest remarks as a direct national threat to the country. He also urged the Vice President to refrain from attacking other people and answer the questions from lawmakers about her office's confidential funds spending. After his speech, some lawmakers took a photo with him to show support. One of them is Pampanga Representative Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, a known ally of VP Sara.
Hindi na to biro. Hindi na to normal na panalita. Isa itong direktang banta sa ating demokrasya, sa ating pamahalaan, at sa seguridad ng bayan. Kung wala kang itinatago, bakit hindi sagutin ang mga tanong? Karapatan ng taong bayan na malaman ang katotohanan.
Senate President Chis Escudero expressed concerns about VP Sara's latest behavior. He reminded the Vice President that she is a public official and she should serve as a role model to everyone. Meanwhile, Senator Amy Marcos refuses to comment about the tension between her brother and her friend. VP Sara's other friend, Senator Bato de la Rosa, defended his support for the Vice President and her Chief of Staff, Attorney Zuleika Lopez.
May tao na humingi ng tulong. Yung Vice Presidente umiiyak, humihingi ng tulong. Oh, ako, mabayaan ko ba na hindi ako pupunta? Na humingi ng tulong yung tao. That's the second highest official of the land. Wala man lang taga-gobyerno na tumulong.
Don't go away because we're not done yet. May dalawa pa tayo. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Brunch here on One News.
All right, to talk more about the latest remarks of VP Sara Duterte and the issue of confidential funds, we have with us right now via Zoom former Senator Laila De Lima. Hi, Senator Laila De Lima. Thanks for joining us again today.
Yes, good morning, Angela and Diego. Nice to be in your program again.
Right.
Good morning sa mga nanonood din at nakikinig po ngayon sa programa niyo.
So, Senator De Lima, kunin na lang po muna namin yung reaction nyo dito po sa recent na video na naipalabas po sa panig po ni VP Sara na meron pong pagbanta sa buhay ng ating Pangulo.
Yung pagbabanta na yan, talaga namang unheard of, from the second highest official of the land. Ngayon lang po ata nangyari yan sa kasaysayan natin. And naghahanap nga ako ng mga other countries na pwede rin na may ganyang history. At wala nga po akong alam. So it's just so unbecoming, it's so concerning, it's so disturbing na second highest official of the land, and to think that she was also the former DepEd secretary.
Right.
Yung immediately ang naisip ko, what do our youth, what do our children think na ganyan, no? Na is that an example from a very high public official publicly attacking, openly attacking the president, the first lady, and the speaker, and worse, nagbanta na napapatayin kung may mangyari sa kanya. Kaya nga naging na tayo ngayon, is it really earned global news coverage. And para sa akin, malaki na naman kahihiyan yan sa ating bayan. Ano na naman yan, magiging infamous na naman tayo. Hindi pa nga natatapos yung mga issue dun sa pagka-notorious ng kanyang tatay, dun sa yung mass murderer na tatay. Napahiya din tayo doon. Marami rin talagang nagque-question doon sa mga pangyayari na yun sa war on drugs. And then here comes the daughter. Ang tawag ko nga dyan, Tatak Duterte. Wala na ba silang sense of propriety? Na hindi ba nila naiisip yun? Public officials sila. I mean, si VP Sara is a public official.
Right.
So, nakakalungkot dahil nga, ano ba na nangyayari na naman sa bayan natin?
Senator, I want to ask you also, of course, the talks, there's been talks about impeachment of the Vice President, and a lot of people are weighing in, including yung mga legal experts are saying na parang medyo malabo, baka kulang ng numero pagdating sa Senate, or is this an issue talaga ng public trust? But your thoughts on that po?
Okay, definitely it's an issue of public trust, betrayal of public trust. Sa punto na yan, may several circumstances siguro or several facts na pwedeng gamitin sa articles of impeachment. Pero as you said, I don't know kung magkakanumero sa Senado, because this is not a legal issue only or a constitutional issue only. Ito ay first and foremost a political exercise. So it's a numbers game. It would be a numbers game. Now siguro, halos wala tayong duda. Sa ngayon, makikita natin na sa House of Representatives, mukhang makukuha naman nila yung required number of votes, yung 1/3, di ba, pagdating sa plenary, or 1/3 kapag meron resolution of impeachment or articles of impeachment. Pero yung articles of impeachment na yan, kahit maaproba sa House of Representatives, ay kailangan iakyat ito sa Senado. Kasi yung Senado ang magta-try at sila rin ang magdidesisyon. Guilty ba or hindi? Yung pagkatapos ng articles of impeachment. Kasi remember, ang required number of votes naman, pagdating po sa Senado, ay 2/3. And we have 24 senators, and that means 16 senators. Now, nakikita naman natin, alam natin yan na meron silang mga kakampi. I mean, the Dutertes, yung mga minions nila, yung mga loyalists nilang mga senators. And also, kahit hindi sila masyadong identified kay Duterte, ay baka iba ang mga magiging nila, baka they might decide to also be on the side of Sara Duterte, of the Vice President. So yun lang ang problema. Hindi natin alam kung makukuha ang numero sa Senado. Pero yung kung iisipin natin, meron na bang enough grounds?
Meron.
Sa tingin ko,
Meron.
meron. Depende na yan kung paano nila i-present na yan, paano nila i-craft yan doon sa articles of impeachment. Dapat malinaw.
Oo, pati
Malinaw yung presentasyon nila.
Oo, pati
Yes.
maisingit ko lang po, Senator, pati yung pagkaso daw
Yes.
po, pag-file ng cases against him,
Criminal
against her,
cases.
criminal cases against her,
Oh, yes.
particularly yung plunder.
Yes, kailangan independently of the impeachment. Kung itutuloy man yung impeachment, wag nang hintayin yung impeachment kung pwede. Na pwede nang kasuhan si VP Sara kasi nga hindi naman siya immune from suit unlike the president.
So do you plan on
So pwede siyang
filing
kasuhan
this
ng mga
case?
graft and corruption, ganyan. And yung mga violations din ng mga code of ethics
Yeah.
and several others. Now, anyone can file it before
What about
before
Senator?
the ombudsman. And then ang ombudsman ang mag-validate ng mga grounds para to determine kung merong probable cause. If there is probable cause, then isasampa na yan, i-elevate na yan sa Sandigan Bayan for those grounds, yung mga kung ano man yung mga kaso na maipa-file and pwedeng i-consider nga yung plunder, graft and corruption, grave threats, and maybe a few others.
Pero kayo, Senator, very quickly lang, do you plan on filing these cases or meron po kayong kakilala na nag-uusap na on filing these cases?
Ako po, wala po akong plano na ako mismo ang magfa-file at this point, because I'm still monitoring the developments. Kailangan maging sigurado talaga kung ano man ang ipa-file. And perhaps there are other personalities na nag-iisip na rin o kaya grupo, mga civil society groups, yung mga anti-corruption groups, baka pwede na sila ang mag-file sa Office of the Ombudsman and any appropriate court.
Alright.
Okay. Sige, we have so much questions pa, kaya we don't have much time. But for the meantime, maraming salamat po sa inyo. Again, for joining us today, former Senator Laila De Lima.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too po. Okay, sige.
Alright, let's move on. Now, our top story for today is about Vice President Sara Duterte. Is she going to be impeached soon? A House committee finds numerous grounds for impeachment against the Vice President. Let's take a look at the report.
Tama na! Sobra na! Itong mga kagaguhan ni OVP, ni Vice President Sara Duterte.
This is what the militant groups are shouting outside the House of Representatives yesterday morning. Vice President Sara Duterte attended the House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability's hearing on her office confidential funds spending. Makabayan President Liza Massa said VP Sara committed a betrayal of public trust for not clearly explaining her office's spending of confidential funds. She emphasized that this is a ground for impeachment.
Loss of confidence at betrayal of public trust dahil doon sa kanyang mga patuloy na hindi pagsagot doon sa mga katanungan kaugnay ng kung paano ginastos yung kanyang confidential funds. At ganun din yung meron ng mga recent data, no? Halimbawa yung about 500 million na di umano ay nandun sa duffel bag at winidraw.
Makabayan lawmakers are planning to file an impeachment complaint before the end of the month. Constitutional expert and former Integrated Bar of the Philippines President Attorney Domingo Cayosa confirms that betrayal of public trust is a ground to impeach the Vice President.
The Constitution also states some grounds, possible grounds for impeachment. Culpable violation of the Constitution, treason, and other high crimes. No? So, but historically also, Congress may find some other offenses or crimes or infractions that may be, to their mind, as elected representatives of the people, enough basis to file an impeachment complaint. So, sila nasa kanila. Wala namang exact enumeration. Hindi naman exclusive yun. So if they find it serious enough, they may do so.
The House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability admitted that they see numerous grounds for impeachment against VP Sara, but they will prioritize their current investigation first before deciding on the Vice President's possible impeachment.
Marami na po tayo nakikita ng grounds, betrayal of public trust, isa-graft and corruption, and so forth and so on. But with respect to the impeachment, if it will be filed by the House of Representatives, wala pa naman po kami na pag-uusapan tungkol doon. Basta tayo, ito, ginagawa pa lang natin yung ating trabaho dito sa committee. So, pag nag-conclude na, that's the time na pag-uusapan namin mga miyembro kung ano magiging laman o content ng aming committee report.
For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
Popcorn.
Ang init naman.
And, okay. And that wraps up today's exciting episode of Brunch.
Join us again tomorrow. I'm Angela Lagunzad Castro. He is Angelo Castro III. We're One News.
I'll cite all the time.
That'll do.